Hello everybody, welcome to my Clojure tutorial about reactive web programming. Today we are going to use Clojure and all the reactive components to start building a simple contacts app that lets you allow or lets you remove, delete contacts, and in the further part or another part of this tutorial I'm also going to show how to add and edit existing contacts. So what are we going to cover in this video? It's the following. Of course, we are going to create a project like we've seen in another video that I've posted already. I won't go into much detail here. Then we're going to define some app state. Well, actually our contacts that we're going to modify and display in our browser. We're going to define the views that will define how the browser looks when there are contacts that can be displayed. And finally we're going to add some simple interaction, like not just displaying stuff but also some interaction. The first step will be that we're going to have the chance to delete contacts that exist. And then I hope it's helping you to try yourself and build your own Clojure Reactive project and have fun with it. Okay, so then let's start. First of all, we're going to use, like we've seen before, just a Chestnut Leiningen template, and I'm going to call it Contacts, and this will create a brand new skeleton for our project. Then I'm going to open the project file first. Well, we won't have to adjust anything in here, I'll just leave it as it is. What we're going to touch is the ClojureScript file, the core CLJS in the source directory. Okay, and there we have our usual skeleton, Chestnut skeleton. First thing we're going to do is, as I said, add something to our app state. For this tutorial or for this video, we're going to stick with just some dummy data that we're hardwiring into this app state here. But in later parts of this tutorial, we'll see how we can retrieve this data from the server. Okay, so we're going to have a vector of contacts, that is, and each element in this vector is a map consisting of an ID. Let's start with ID 0. We're just starting with a name and an email address, just some dummy data. Okay, once more. That's good old Jim at jim.com. I'm not too many typos today. Jane is also here, and okay, one more. And there's also Tom, of course. Okay, so now we're having some hard-coded state in here that is part of our app state atom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to define an app view. This is the general or the root topmost view that is the entire page. That's how you can think of it. We're going to reify an iRender protocol implementing the render method. I won't explain so many details about this because I've covered that in other videos that you can find in my channel. I think I've also defined a playlist for the entire stuff here, if you're interested. So what do we have to do here? We have to, or what do we want the page to look like? First of all, we're going to wrap all the stuff into a div element, an HTML div element, and for now we will only have one element within that div, which is this is unclear now because that's what we have to build next. Let's say we have a contacts view or list view, and it gets passed the contacts and is usually owner, and once again it is we reify the iRender again. Okay, once more a div, and here we have the next problem. Well, actually what we can do now is we can now complete this one here, the app view. We're telling we now have to define what the contents of this div shall be, and we're saying now that it shall build the contacts list view with part of the app state here. We pass a cursor, which we're creating in just like this. So that means this contact list view gets built by and it's getting passed a cursor to this part here of the state, and that will be bound to the contacts symbol within the function here. We can also, before we continue with this here, we can also do the root to mount the app view on the page. And we say reify iRender again, render, and now we say build app view. Well, it is. We don't even have to do this, because what we can do here is we can pass the app view directly to the root function. So we pass the app view, then we pass the app state, which is the second argument of the root function, and last but not least we have to tell it where in the template, the HTML template, it shall mount the React component. So we're just taking the app div here, so we can remove the template stuff. Okay, so this tells the root function, hey, look into the HTML, find the HTML element with the ID app, and insert the resulting component into that HTML element. So when we have a look at the HTML template, which is in the resources folder, the index.html file, you can see that there is a div with the ID app. So that's where the resulting component will be injected into. Okay, so we're telling, hey, build the app view component, and then we say, or we're passing the app state, the entire app state into that, so that's where we bound to the state symbol within the app view method here. And the app view is just a div containing the contacts list view for now, and we're passing in a subset of the entire state, which is the contacts part here, into the contacts list view function. Okay, so we have to complete this. We're going to create a view for a single contact. We're going to build or pass a single contact into this function, and then once again refi render, not interested in the first argument of that render function. Okay, we're also wrapping this into a div element, and then now we're displaying the guts here, or the properties of our contact. So that means first of all we're showing for simplicity, let's just keep it a div nil, and what shall be displayed here as text is the name of the contact. Similarly, we're going to do the same for the email address. We're showing the email address of the contact in a div. And finally, what we're adding is a button that for now does nothing. We'll add the functionality later. And we're calling this delete button. So what this button shall do later is, of course, obviously delete the contact that it's bound to. Okay, so we have now to complete the contacts list view, because what we want to do now is display or iterate over the contacts that we have and render one contact view for each contact that we have. And there is a function for this in OM. You could also do a map, but we're using build all, and we're saying, hey, render the contact view for each of our contacts, and we'll see a little issue there later, but I'm going to show you what it's like right now. So now we should be ready to fire it up and have a look at what happens. So I start the REPL, which is going to take a moment. Well, actually, what happens here is this will be a problem, but you'll see that in a minute. Because what gets returned here is a lazy sequence, and you you never want to return a lazy sequence when building your page. However, our REPL is up and running. Now we're going to connect to it. Localhost port so and so. And there we are. Now let's fire up the application. It takes a moment to compile the ClojureScript and everything. There we are. And now we can just try to open the page. And as you see, it's empty. Oh, it's not empty because of the problem that I mentioned, but because of something else which I've missed. This is an open document because getElement by ID is of course a method of the JavaScript document object, and yeah, well, so that was missing. Okay, now what we see here is some strange number. Actually, it's several numbers, and that is because, well, there are two reasons. First of all, as I mentioned, this is a lazy sequence, and that's the problem. So we could now force it to evaluate this lazy sequence, and then we see, oh, this seems to be working, but then we still have this strange number stuff here, and that turns out to be because this here is not an array. It is some kind of collection, maybe a vector or something, but it's not. It somehow needs to be in Java array. So we don't use that do all, but we're going to use to array. So we're casting, more or less casting this into an array. And then, hey, great. So it's a little bit ugly, of course, but we won't care about that in this video. So, but now what we have, or what we don't have, is some action that is bound to the delete button. So you see when I click it, it doesn't do anything. First of all, where this event handler is going to be installed is this nil here. This is actually the location where you can define attributes of HTML components that you're building via the DOM or the stuff here. So what we're going to do is we're going to define an onClick handler, which is just a function, and we're in the first step we're just printing click for that, and there we are. As you can see, we seem to have found the right location where to put this, and that's why we can see now the click in the console. Okay, but that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want this very contact to be removed from our app state when the user clicks the button. So how can we do this? The problem is, in this scope here of that function, of the contact view function, we don't have a reference to the entire contacts vector here. So you could of course set this to nil. You can do this in the first step. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the transact method of This is basically how you can alter state within the app state, and it takes as an argument the state, which is contact in this first step, and a function that returns the new state. Well, we're just saying returning nil here, like we said. So let's have a look at what happens now. Okay, so something happens, but not what we intended to, obviously, because the buttons are still there. Okay, reload the page once. What's going on here? Let's try to debug this. Let's try to print contact. Well, that won't have much, but well, that's obviously what we expected. Now let's try to print app state, which is the entire state that we have here, the entire atom. Okay, so what we can see now is that whenever we click a button, our contacts vector here doesn't well, the contact that we're trying to remove doesn't really get removed, but it's just being replaced by nil because of what we're doing here. So that's why it's still an entry within that vector, and that's why it's still being rendered, although there's no name and no email anymore, but it's still being rendered, and that's why we see the delete buttons without anything. Okay, so how do we get around this? That seems to be a problem because, as I mentioned here, we don't have any kind of means how we can access this here without. Well, we could of course hardwire it within here, but that's not really what you want to do, and that's why OMS supports something called ref cursors. So what we're defining is a function which, I think it was like this, contacts and root cursor app state. That should be it. Well, what we're defining here is a function that returns a cursor to the entire contacts vector here. So wherever you want to alter this or want to access the contacts vector, you can just call this function and then receive a copy, more or less, of or a cursor that points to this vector here of contacts. So what this basically means in detail is, hey, take that atom app state, create a cursor from it, go into that cursor to the contacts key and return the value that is being referenced by the contacts key, and from that make a new cursor and return that. So now we can access the cursors. Let's call it CS, and we're just calling contacts. Now in CS, in that CS variable, we have a cursor that points to all the contacts. I'm going to remove this transact here for now, and we can just check this. By printing it without doing anything else. Okay, and that seems to be what we need, because when you click the first one, you want the element with the ID 0 being removed. So that's what we have to tell the application now. So we're saying transact, and transact again we can pass now the CS or all the contacts. That's the stuff we want to alter right now. The vector of contacts, because we want to remove one entry. And then we're saying remove. I think what was the syntax? I think we compare the ID of our contact to the ID of the contact we're iterating over, and if it's equal, then it's being removed, and we are iterating over CS. Let's see if that works. No, it doesn't. Because I don't know. So it failed if n is a function. Okay, so what I missed here was we have to provide a function here, of course, and not the value. Well, you can also do it like this and use update. Because, yeah, okay, great. Well, not really great, because there's one thing I've missed, which is, yeah, remove is returning a lazy sequence again. That is breaking it after having removed one thing, because CS is not anymore a vector, it is a reference to a lazy object or lazy sequence. So what we're going to do here is to fix this, as we're casting the remove or the lazy sequence to a vector. And once again, reload the page, delete, delete, delete. Great. Well, after reload we still have the contacts because we are not persisting anything. However, this may look a bit complicated. First of all, I've changed this from transact to update, because when using transact, the second argument here is expected to be a function, but in this case we can just use a value instead of a function. Once again, to make it clear, we could also do this and then say, hey, this is a function. And it should do the same. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's make this a bit prettier. Okay, let's go through this once more. What we're doing is we're defining a button and we're saying, hey, there's an on-click handler or an event listener for the click event consisting of this function here. So when the user clicks you, then call our contacts function, which is basically a reference to our vector of all contacts, because otherwise we wouldn't have we couldn't access this from within this function over here, from within the context view. That's why we're doing it like this, which is a way of abstracting it. Okay, and as soon as we have the reference to all the contacts, then replace it by something that's being calculated in here. And what we do within here is we are comparing each of the contacts, or each ID of a contact of the contact we're iterating over to the ID that we got passed into, or that our contact is. So this here is the results, or evaluates to the ID that is the contact that has been clicked the delete button for, and this here is the one that we're iterating over. And if it's equal, then remove it. That's basically what the remove function does, which is just basic Clojure. Yeah. So, and then as we've seen, we have to cast it into a vector, because otherwise it would just be a lazy sequence, which doesn't work in well, it's a general rule to never have lazy sequences in your app state. Okay, and that's it for now. Anything else? Let's have just one more look, just for println app state. Or now, what's maybe more interesting is here println CS, which is the result or the referencing cursor. Delete it, and then we see, hey, this is the entire contact stuff. And when we click in again, then we should see mic removed already. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it basically. We've learned a new concept, which is the ref cursor stuff here, when you have to access parts of the app state that otherwise you wouldn't have access to within your view function. And we've also seen how to use transact or update to adjust or alter the state of your application. As I've mentioned, in the next video I'm going to cover how to we're going to insert or add some kind of method that lets us add contacts again, and also how to edit a contact. So far, thanks for watching.